Hey, welcome back to Silent Sales Machine Radio. I'm your host, Jim Cockrum, and I've got a great guest with us today who I'll introduce to you in just a moment. We're going to be talking today about the mental attitude that's required to take the leap from being in the professional world or maybe the educational world or, uh, maybe a highly achieved corporate position to being your own business owner. There's a transition that happens there. There's a mindset shift that happens there. And we've got someone who's done that very recently that can fill us in. It's been 16 years ago since I did that. So sometimes it's hard for me to remember what it was even like to have a real job and a real boss and a real schedule. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today with a gentleman who happens to be one of our coaches. He lives in Brisbane, Australia with his wife, Sam, and three great kids. We had a chance to get caught up a little bit today before I hit record. Just a beautiful family, a beautiful background, quite a story. This guy has a PhD in chemical engineering. I'm reading from my notes here. He was at Harvard. He's been a professor at the University of Wyoming. Like, this guy's got a professional pedigree, an educational pedigree, but he's interested in internet business now. And he's actually come on board as one of the latest coaches on our team. And he's doing some incredible things. So a couple of the other things we're going to talk about today before I bring on Matt, besides mindset, we're going to talk a little bit about his impression of the community of commerce that we're building. You've heard Brett and I talk about it. You've heard us mentioning it. And we're in the middle of, as I record this, if you can't tell from the Christmas tree right above my microphone, we're in the middle of the Christmas season. So we're at the very beginning of starting to tell the story of the first go-round of Dynasty Toys and the co-op that we've built with our community. Matt's participating in that as well. So the one last thing I will say, it's kind of like a little housekeeping before we go here, is if you're listening to this right now, this is one of those episodes where there is a video as well. It's in the show notes. If you go to silentjim.com, just beneath the show notes, you'll see some links for this episode. You'll see some links right over to YouTube where you can actually watch this episode as well. If you're watching on YouTube, hey, go to silentjim.com to see all the episodes, because not all of our episodes are in video format. So with that being said, welcome, Mr. Matt Rosinski. How are you today?
Fantastic, Jim. How are you?
I'm blessed, buddy. It's great to talk to you, and it's been a pleasure hanging out with you a little bit today and chatting with you. And thank you for getting up super early in the morning, by the way. The time difference makes these kind of meetings challenging sometimes. So it's bright and early in the morning where you are, and I'm about an hour from sunset here. So it's pretty incredible doing business with people around the world and arranging schedules. But man, so thrilled to have you on the show today, and excited for the topic. And we didn't dive real deep into it. I just know that you come from a very professional, established background. You and your wife, both professional, career-driven people. And now you've got this interest in e-commerce and internet business. And you're in Australia. You're doing it from Australia. So, tell us a little bit of that story. Fill in some gaps that I missed, and let's share some lessons today with the folks.
Yeah, that's right. So we have moved around quite a lot as a couple. We've been married for 18 years, and during that time, we've lived in the States, and we really love travel. That was one of the things that we've always been passionate about. And when we got back to Australia, it was a case of I had this idea of building a business at some point, but we wanted some cash. We wanted to have a base to build on. And so I ended up taking a job as an engineer in the mining industry, and Sam, my wife, was working as a teacher part-time, but we had two little kids at the time when we moved back to Australia. And so I ended up staying in business or in that corporate environment for a lot longer than I initially intended. It just one thing led to another, and you get promotions and you get pay rises, and you start to get dependent on that regular money in the bank account that comes predictably every month. And it was the mining boom here in Australia, so the pay was really, really good, and it was just hard to knock back. So I ended up working in the mining industry for 12 years, but it was during the last three or so years of that, it started getting more difficult, just in terms of the culture at the work, and also this niggle in the back of my mind of the original intent of why I started working in that area was simply to build a basis to work on a business of my own, because that was something that I've always wanted to do at some point. But there were a few triggering events. I guess things in my work weren't, in my job specifically, were getting a little more difficult, and I guess had a few changes there in my role that that triggered this. Okay, now this is the defining moment that I need to start learning and make changes. And so I started learning as much as I could possibly learn and consume every weekend at night. I was learning all sorts of things: programming, digital marketing, all sorts of courses that I took over a 3-year period, and that brought me up until July last year, where I actually left my job, my safe employee's position in a corporate role, to the wild area of building your own business.
The wild west of
The
internet
Wild
business.
West, that's for sure.
And it's added a source of stability. If I remember correctly, you said your wife, Sam, or Samantha, she still is in the corporate world. So that's kind of a bit of a cushion as you guys make this transition. But I just posted just this morning, Matt, I was reminded recently of a statistic that, and this is United States, I'm assuming it applies globally as well, that about 80% of us aren't satisfied with our career, as far as we don't find it motivating and inspirational. We don't find it something that we're excited about in the morning. 80% of us. I mean, that's an epidemic.
It is.
So in a way, the fuel and the energy that you get from having your own thing it's very motivating. It's very stimulating, and it never gets old. I'm 16 years into this, and I can't imagine going to a 9 to 5. The world needs everybody, and God bless those people who get up and do the job they love every day. And everyone, there's so many different jobs that need filled out there. That's awesome. But for me, you called it, I think, let me see if I heard your Australian slang correctly. Did you say you had a niggle in the back of your mind? Niggle?
Yeah.
See, now I've never heard that word before, but I know exactly what it means.
Right.
It's like this, I might say an inkling, or like urge that I can't get rid of. Right. That's kind of what it sounds like that word means. Yeah. And it's like, this drawing me away. Like, this is not what you were made for. You were made for something bigger than this. You were made for something more than this. And those of us that have that, you just can't get rid of it. I had a beautiful job. And I tell my story in the Silent Sales Machine book. I'm not going to go into it right now. This is about your story. But I know exactly what that feeling's like. It's like, I should be very appreciative of the job I have, but I know there's more out there.
And that's so right. And it was this conversation that I had with my wife last year at a cafe we went to every weekend, and we sort of would talk about the week, just our sort of couple time. And it was something that we discussed openly about. And what I am just so grateful for is that having a loving wife who supports me in doing this crazy thing, because she had a lot of misgivings and concerns, and we had to talk through it. But at the end of the day, she has supported me. And what's been so awesome about this in the last year is that we've almost switched roles in many ways. I've been living at home. I'm cooking the meals. The kids walk to school now. So they used to have to commute 1 hour each way to school, but they walk to their school where we live. I don't have to go on a 11-hour I was away for 11 hours every day at the job
Right.
that I had, and now I'm home when the kids get home. It's in terms of lifestyle, it's been a huge improvement over the last year.
That's beautiful. And the benefit to the kids of having both their parents around,
Mm,
and, you're not gone when you're able to be there. Just being there, just being present is
mm,
such a huge gift. And, through the great times, for me, it's been 16 years. I look back at the great times, and there's been some kind of scary segments there too. Like for a few months at a time, it's like, okay, did we do the right thing here? That maybe we were crazy. But you even look back at that. You went through it as a family,
yeah.
the lessons you learned as a family, and that we were all there. We were doing it together.
Hmm.
There's a bond there, and
Yeah.
I wouldn't change it. You think you want smooth sailing and a line that always goes up, and income and results and success, but that's not what it looks like. And what you learn in those valleys is, man, we did that together, and we're closer for it. So that's one of the beautiful benefits to me is of business ownership. Hey, it's going to be a roller coaster, but if you're doing it with your family, oh, it's such a beautiful thing. So
Yeah.
it's so cool that you're able to be there.
Yeah.
What
That's
are,
right.
what are some of the lessons that give you a chance to mentally prepare here? I want to go with some of the lessons going from that. I was never a college professor. I don't have a PhD in anything. People have heard me use the joke several times. My wife graduated magna cum laude, top of her class. I graduated, thank the Lord. Like I barely got out of school, right? I'm not one of these high education guys. I never had a long list of people seeking me to hire me. I was like, please, someone give me a job after college. So for a high achieving PhD engineer with probably 1,000 places that would hire you tomorrow, what are some of the things that you took away from that culture in that transition into owning your own business? Like, what are some of the challenges there? Because I imagine there's some people out there right now. They're like, oh, I have too good a job. I could never make that leap to my own business.
Hmm. Hmm.
Talk us through
Yeah.
some of those. You mentioned the conversation you had with your wife, but what's that
Yeah.
transition been like? And like, how do you stay motivated too? Some of those
Yeah.
topics.
Yeah. It's something that first point. Um, the culture in academia is quite different to say working in a business. So I made two transitions. I was in academia, and that's very much focused on um, grant writing and uh, building courses, teaching students, and that's just a completely different mindset and daily habits. Building off of that, I wanted to. What was in the back of my mind about that was that I was teaching kids to go out into the world, but I hadn't had too much real world experience myself in industry. So I was a PhD in chemical engineering, but I hadn't actually worked in industry in chemical engineering myself. So that's something that it bothered me a little bit because I felt that I wasn't being authentic there. And so that's one of the reasons why I decided I wanted to work in a business. And so that's, and basically I trained this in another field altogether. While I was teaching chemical engineering, I learned how to be a business analyst. And one of the reasons why I did that was so that it would just give me a bit more understanding of what I needed to for business, and that's really helped me with what I'm doing now in Amazon. It's and online. It's knowing your numbers, having a good understanding of your numbers, and we were talking a little bit about it before, and and Amazon's not exactly the easiest platform to see your numbers and see uh, the the profit that you are making on your sales. And I think this can actually catch a lot of people out in the early days, and maybe even later on, where if you really don't understand all the additional fees that are on top of your referral and your FBA fees, that that will affect your margin. And so that's something that I would say, sort of bringing this around to mindset, and it's you've got to get into that habit of looking at your numbers on a regular basis and having a really good idea, or building up a criteria that you're going to use
And
when
on that note, Matt, let me just, not to interrupt you too much, but we've got a training, and I'm kind of thinking through the timing of when this podcast will go public versus when the training that I'm about to refer to, the training's probably already happened by the time listeners and viewers are seeing this content. So I'll put a link in the show notes to that same training that you and I were talking about that's already recorded, where we go in depth into all the Amazon fees, what they mean, how you can track them and know exactly where you stand at any given point. So you're not guessing. Because it's kind of like, it reminds me a little bit of getting that first paycheck, the first job I had in high school when I was 14 or 15 years old. I go and I work X number of hours for X dollars per hour. So I'm expecting a check. Simple math here, guys, $3 an hour, 20 hours. I need $60, something like that, right? I didn't get $60. I got like $42. And I was like, wait a second, that's not the right math. Well, then you see all the taxes and the fees, and right. So I think as an Amazon seller, you have that same experience when you first get in. You think, it's like, okay, I sold all this stuff. I know my cost of goods. Okay, here comes this check. Well, okay, Amazon's fees, a big piece of that. And maybe you had some returns in there. And how do you track those? How are those factored? The refunds. And so knowing those fees, we've got some training. It's a great training session that we did recently. I'll link to it right in the show notes of this episode. And I know as a business analyst, that's important to you to be able to look at your numbers. And I know even from a Hebrew vantage point, which is my business foundational training, I go back to the biblical truths, the Hebrew truths, and the root word, one of the root words of wisdom is understanding the numbers. Until you understand the numbers, you cannot apply wisdom to anything. You got to know the numbers. If there's numbers involved, you got to know them if you're going to apply wisdom. The more you can drill in and see and understand them, and Amazon doesn't do a great job on its own of revealing in its reports exactly what's going on. You can dig for a while and not figure it out. So that's why we've got this training we put together. I'm excited about it. It's free. We're sticking it in our Facebook group. Only thing you have to do is join our free Facebook group to see the training. So I'm excited to get that in front of you, Matt, see what you think, and for the listeners today too, because fees are, it's a pain point for new sellers for sure, understanding them. And there's a couple dozen of them that some of them, I couldn't rattle them off the top of my head, but some of them, they're in there and they apply to different situations and circumstances. You'll see different fees. So we'll get that training to folks. Again, the show notes at silentjim.com/podcast. Go to this episode, look at the show notes, you'll see the training. But all right, man, sorry I interrupted you there, but I think that's some good value for everyone.
Cool. Yeah, so just building on the other part of your question, I think was about the mindset and where I going from this employee mindset to I guess a business owner's mindset. It's something that I've had to really stretch my comfort zone because as an employee, it's comfortable. You have a regular structure. The business is already there. There's a role already defined. You go into that role. There are systems for everything in place. When you do this business thing yourself, you've got to build all that yourself. You've got to start out, how am I going to do my accounting? How am I going to source products? What products am I going to source? Am I going to just do, what strategy am I using? Am I going to go a mile wide and an inch deep, or am I going to go all in on one product? And these are all questions that no one else is going to help you. No one's going to make those choices for you. You've got to make those choices as your own business owner. And so if you're an employee, I think decisions are going to be made by committee, but it's also not your cash on the line. If the decision turns out bad, or the business doesn't make so much money, you probably don't get a a good review on your annual review, but turn that around as a business owner, that's personal. That
Yeah.
affects your family if things
Yeah.
don't work out.
I
So
think in the risk and the reward, as an
mm,
employee, you share very little of the risk and you share very little of the reward as an employee. As a business
that's right.
owner, you get all of it, and you only
That's
get
right.
to offload a little bit of it. You can the risk is the risks hit you harder than anybody, and the rewards hit you bigger than anyone.
Mm,
Um, but it does take us. It takes a my philosophy is you should approach any work, any job that you have with an entrepreneurial mindset.
that's
But
right.
you have no choice but to have that mindset when you
Yes,
actually
that's
own
right.
your own business. You can't just, I don't feel like it on anything. You gotta take care of it whether you like it or not. So
That's
I'm
right.
curious to hear how you made that transition. How does that feel on a
Yeah,
day-to-day basis, routine wise? Because it hasn't been all that long for you
that's
to
right.
have this new
Yeah.
routine.
So I bought my first inventory in March this year, and so and I bought coaching with Jim Cockram Coaching, and
Right. One of our
had a
students.
coach, and I was pretty full on for 3 months. I was like a machine every day. I was just um, turning on the computer and going through this process that I was developing with the help of my coach, and um, yeah, just executing. And um, I guess that's something that is really important, is to build that process, the daily habits, the things that you do on a daily basis, showing up every day. Uh, and along that process, there are a lot of hurdles that would come up. I got a few letters from basically IP type
Right.
letters, or
Yes.
um, so I had this inventory, and that was when I was saying uh, I'm really glad that I took the advice of going a mile wide and an inch deep on some things, but then on others, where you buy in there's so this is in online arbitrage was the strategy I was using, and sometimes often it can happen where the price tanks on the inventory that you purchased, and so coming up with a strategy in response to that doesn't feel good. So being learning to be comfortable with that uncertainty on a daily basis, and so that's something that I think is important to realize. You're going to have to be able to um, be a little bit more uncomfortable than you might have been as an employee in different ways. There's plenty of ways that you can be uncomfortable as an employee, but it's quite a bit different as a business owner.
There's a different weight to it for sure.
Mm,
And I want to point out and remind the listeners as well that you are in Australia. Amazon's only recently established itself in Australia.
yeah,
We
that's
have
right.
plenty of students that are actually in countries where there's no presence by Amazon at all. This truly is a global opportunity, but there's additional benefits and challenges that come with not being in one of the major, you know, Canada, United States, primarily United States, the UK, Japan, Germany, some of those places where it's a pretty heavy presence. Australia's not there yet, nor are a lot of countries, but it is still possible. You mentioned online arbitrage. That's basically buying products online. And then are you using a fulfillment center? I'm curious. Are you selling in
Yeah,
the United States through a fulfillment center? Okay.
yes, I
Yeah,
am.
we have a good handful of great fulfillment centers. And basically for the listener's sake, that's just a partner who's located typically in the United States, if that's where you're trying to sell, that handles your product for you. So instead of Matt shipping all of his products to Australia, prepping them, and then sending them all the way back to the United States, he just has someone here do that for him. That's what a good prep center can do. And in the Proven Amazon course, we have a whole list of prep center partners. Many of them are very great partners of ours. Some of our coaches are also prep center partners, working with international, primarily international students, or people who you got people who live in small apartments in Manhattan. Like they don't have room to process their packages. They send them to a prep center. And that way they don't have to ever actually touch or see their inventory. Someone else is doing that part for them. But it sounds like you're figuring out those little details. You've gone through the coaching program. You're figuring out those details. You're studying your numbers. You're seeing some results. You actually jumped on. You became a coach with us. Tell me some really good things are happening. You've made some good impressions around here. I mean, today is the first day that you and I have actually met. Correct me if I'm wrong. You weren't at CES, were you?
Yeah, I actually was at CES.
Were you? Oh, I'm sorry. Did we talk?
But I know I didn't actually.
Okay, because I was going to feel terrible if we actually spoke. I didn't remember. No. But we've got so many coaches now that dozens of coaches, many of whom I just haven't actually met in person. So there's so many great success stories popping up. This organization has gotten way bigger than me, but it's great having you on the team, Matt. But so what else can we share? If there's any other lessons about the transition, any other lessons about what you're doing that's working, strategies you're trying.
So
the co-op.
Yeah, that's right. So after some time in doing online arbitrage, I was looking for some wholesale opportunities, and I managed to get one wholesale account that I'm still working with at the moment. And having some success with, but even then, you're not immune to the situation where other sellers start to sell the same products, jump on the listings that you create, and all these other sorts of things that can pop up. And I saw the Dynasty toys opportunity coming up, and that was one of the things that I really got excited about, and have jumped in on that opportunity with the Done For You service, and also the authorized reseller opportunity. And I basically I saw that as a huge opportunity from the point of view of leverage and scale. With an ordinary wholesaler, there are how many people in the middle, in between the manufacturer and you as the end buyer, who then puts that product up onto Amazon. But with the community of commerce, there's this opportunity to combine together in a group of buyers, where now you can actually start playing with the big boys in terms of the sourcing and creating products. So it's one of the most exciting parts about being involved with this community that I have experienced so far.
That's beautiful. Yeah, and let me just address the listeners for just a moment. For those, maybe this is your first episode, you haven't heard us talk about the co-op before, I'll stick links to this stuff in the resources for this episode. But to summarize it, Brett, my partner Brett, and I have been working very hard for a long time to say, hey, we've got a lot of really great people in our community who are marketers. They want to do something big together. Let's kind of pool our resources a little bit and really launch some big, cool, special products together. And co-ops have been around for a long time. Farmers have used them for forever. It's some of the oldest law in the United States. And the laws are established globally. Anybody can participate in our co-op, actually. And so we all kind of share in the benefits of these big brands that we're building and launching. Dynasty Toys is the first one that we're doing, but we hope to have multiple brands that our community can own a piece of, basically, at the end of the day. And as it grows, as we all push it out there and help each other and help market it and benefit, it's not the traditional business model. It's kind of like it's a group ownership. And farmers have done it for years. They kind of pool their resources together. They all buy seeds at a discounted rate. And then when the crops come in, they all sell their crops for the same price. It's not price fixing if it's under the co-op law, which is what we're under, because we've established a legal co-op. We spent tens of thousands of dollars and all kinds of paperwork, but we have it now. So you're going to hear more about that, especially in 2019. Right now, it was just kind of our core folks who got real excited about it, and you were one of those, Matt. So thanks for jumping in. We had about 1,000 people or so jump in with us, of our strongest core members of our community. But after we prove the story out and have some great success to show, I think a lot more people will be interested in that subject. So yeah, we're certainly very excited about it as well. And there's so many things we can do with this co-op. But that's a kind of a topic that we can go in depth with another show, another time. But it's great having you on board with us for that, for sure. But if any lessons from that stand out as well, feel free to share. I'm not trying to change the subject, but it is a deep conversation potentially.
Yeah, that's right. I would just sort of touch on the topic of, I guess, Dynasty Toys. One of the books that every employee of Dynasty Toys is required to read, I believe, is called Shoe Dog. It's by Philip Knight, who he's the founder of Nike. And so I've been going through that book myself, and some of the things that just those nuggets of wisdom that are coming up. One of the things that he struggled with was selling. He used to this is Phil Knight. He used to be an encyclopedia salesman, and he hated it and wasn't very good at it either. And then he tried I think he was in mutual funds or some sort of investment sales that he also wasn't really excited about, and he had a little bit more success with that because he knew a little bit more about it. But then shoes. For some reason, he had no problem selling shoes out the back of his Valiant at sporting events. And the difference there was belief. He had a belief in his product. And in his words, he says, belief is irresistible. And belief is one of those things that I think if you have that as a business owner, that's something that people are drawn to you with that. And belief is irresistible to customers and also to partners, potential people who might work with you. And it basically shines through everything you do and say, if you've got that belief in the thing that you're doing. And so for me, that's something that, whether I have to go and get an extra job at some time in the future to help support what I do, it's not going to change this belief that I have in the future of online business and doing something that means that has this higher purpose than myself.
That's beautiful.
Yeah,
well,
so
and something that stands out to me as I hear you say that too, Matt, is the driving belief around here. I mean, this didn't start off in my mind 16 years ago, 18 years ago as, and I want to be a part of a big community. I was just thinking, I want to be home with my kids. I want to be around my wife a whole lot more than I am. I know there's other ways to make money. But that core passion of mine, that desire to be home with my family, resonated with other people. And suddenly I'm in a community of people who kind of think the same way. It's like, we want something more. We want something bigger. Then the power of that community almost became a part of my driving passion. It's like, okay, there's a responsibility here. We got a big community here. We need to serve them well. So my role grew as I focused more on not achieving my own goals, but the goals of the community. And I don't feel like I'm selling anything ever. I feel like I'm offering solutions. So you talk about, the founder of Nike goes from, products he can't sell, doesn't believe in, to something he finally believes in, and that made the difference. It doesn't feel like selling. It doesn't feel like you're twisting people's arms when it's something that works, you love it, you're passionate about it. And that's what this community has become for me. I don't feel like I have to sell the community at all. It's like, hey, here's the results we're getting. Here's the tools we're using. If you want to come join us, come on in. If not, hey, God bless you, go do your thing. But there's a sales process there, but it just doesn't feel like, you don't have to trick anybody. You don't have to fool anybody once you've got that passion and the results. So that's a great book. Actually, I've not read it yet myself, but we tell people to read it all the time. I've heard clips and I've, picked up bits and pieces of it, but that's a great recommendation. Shoe Dog is the name of the book, right? Yeah. Thanks for mentioning that. I'll probably add that to my list. I'm trying to read a book or two a week right now on Audible, which is a great habit to get into, man. I learned so many good things just constantly being exposed to great books and recommendations like that, Matt. Just someone drops the name of the book. I'm like, I make a note, add it to my list.
Yeah,
So
that
cool. Good
I'm
recommendation.
a yeah I'm an avid reader as well. I have a long list of books that I are on my to read list.
That's great. Hey, give me a couple more, man. I'll give you a couple of my good ones too. But what else is on your list?
Um, well, I've got there's a book called The Brain Audit. It's by Sean D'Souza, and it's a fairly old book. It's been around a long time, but it's a really useful book for learning the basics of marketing your business or any sort of product. It's very straightforward. It's this guy lives in New Zealand who wrote that book. I've read that a few times.
I'll check it
What
out.
it? Pardon?
I'll check it out for sure,
Yeah,
man.
yeah. And Persuasion by Robert Cialdini is another one that I've got on my list. Then another one that I'm sort of focusing more on for because as a stream of income, I'm looking at consulting, providing a consulting service for businesses who are wanting to go online and sell online.
Huge
And
opportunity. Yeah.
so books related to that topic. There's a book called The Amazon Dilemma that I'm currently reading. And so that sort of is the point of view from a brand and the challenges that brands have with Amazon and specifically with online arbitrage and people like me selling their products if they're not showing up and representing their own brands on that platform. So
That
yeah,
sounds like a great book because that's an
that
opportunity that's there for all of us is to help
that's correct.
brands get established in the right way on Amazon. And
Mm-hmm.
anywhere in the world with a basic
Yeah.
understanding of how to sell on the platform can. So that's it. What was the title of that book again?
It's called The Amazon Dilemma.
The Amazon Dilemma. Cool. Yeah, that sounds like one I should definitely check out. I imagine those who are focused primarily on that business model have heard of that one. Our PPP students, proven product partnering. That's what we teach you how to do. Partner up with established brands and sell. It's one of the modules of the Proven Amazon course. Teaches you that exact model. We have people who focus just on that. So that's a great book recommendation for them for sure.
Yeah.
I'll name a couple of my favorite. These are the two I go to these quite frequently. But Entree Leadership by Dave Ramsey. It's a good book. It talks about how he went from a card table in his garage to it's about $150 million operation now, and the lessons he learned in hiring the right people, the right kind of partnerships, and all the pain points of growing a business. Not that I plan to have that many employees or a big building anytime soon, but a lot of the lessons he learned, um, apply. But the one thing I don't want to ever have is that big building with employees that come to work every day. We're a very flat, scattered organization with a lot of flexibility at all points. Like with you, Matt, it's not like hey, you're a coach, you have to do this every day. Here's the things you have to check, the boxes you have to check. No, it's a very flat organization with a lot of people who are each of them playing their role well, and really very few people that work full time just for us. It's a very loosely pieced together organization with a lot of great people doing their jobs very, very well, but doing a lot of other things on this as well on top of that. But still, I learned some good lessons from that book. And the other one is Daniel Lapin's Business Secrets from the Bible. Regardless of someone's worldview, man, that book is just eye-opening.
Mm-hmm.
I call the Hebrew nation, the Hebrew culture, the longest longitudinal study. As a PhD engineer, man, you know what a longitudinal study, like it just looks at a long period of time, for those who don't know what I'm talking about, and says, what big factors can we learn from this group of people that we've studied for a long period of time? That's what that book goes into. Like, there are certain truths about business and money that have always been, they always will be. No one's going to change them. This is just how it works.
Yeah.
And it's stuff I was never exposed to until I picked up that book. Even though I'm a Christian, and I've been in the Bible my whole life, or practically, it's stuff I'm like, wow, there it is right there. I never noticed that before. So I found that book very revolutionary for me in the way I think and approach business and money. And regardless of someone's worldview, I think you'd be challenged to counter any of the arguments he makes in that book with any rational arguments, because he lays them out so well. But yeah, those are a couple of my favorites for those. I didn't know we were going to go into a book reading list today, but
Yeah.
fun, man. I love hearing
New
what books
segment.
are impacting people's lives.
Hmm. Yeah, and one more that I'll just add there that you reminded me of with that story about Daniel Lappin.
Daniel
Daniel
Lappin.
Lapin's.
Yeah.
Yeah. So another book I read recently is Anti-Fragile by Nassim Taleb. But one of the concepts in that book that really struck me home was the idea of the longer something has been around, the longer an idea or a concept has been around, the more likely it is to be true. Uh,
Mm.
and so when you're talking about biblical concepts and that sort of thing, then that completely resonates with that idea
Yeah.
because the proven concepts, we know that they work, and that's why we have religions. That's why we have philosophies that have lasted thousands of years. It's because they work.
The established truths contained inside them. Yeah.
Hmm.
That's beautiful. Well, man, it's been great hanging out with you today. I think we're going to start to land this one, land this plane coming in for landing. But I want to hear if there's any final thoughts, anything that we left out, um, anything that you want to say to our listeners today and our viewers today.
I guess I just want to talk directly to you if you are in a job, working in a corporate environment, working in any sort of regular environment, and have this little thought in the back of your head,
The niggle.
this niggle of wanting something that's more purpose-driven, more authentically you, then listen to that and go with it. It might be that you can get there without leaving your job. There's a lot of ways to do this. I mean, if I was to give myself advice 2 years ago, I would have said, well, completely do this while you're still working and build up from there. So you have to, but listen to that voice in your head, and feed it information. Learn as much as you can. Become part of this community and ask questions, but all the time, just be true to yourself. You've got to answer these questions yourself. You've got to own the questions. You've got to take responsibility. It's going from that mindset of an employee to an owner can happen while you're still working for someone else. It's about owning your results, owning your choices, and that's something that you can show up for every day.
Yeah, take ownership of the process. It's not for me, it kind of was, there was a little forced leap that happened in there, but I think when it's done the right way, it's kind of like the way you did it. It wasn't a forced leap off a cliff. It was a slow, gradual transition, and it took some time, and you studied and you did both for a while. And I advise that, monetary stress is no joke in a marriage, especially if you're married. You've got to do it in such a way that honors your spouse and they're along for the ride, and you have those big conversations about how much are we willing to risk? How much do we need to have in the bank before you're comfortable with this transition? When people ask me, it's like, they say, Jim, how much money should we have set aside? How many months expenses before I go full time? And I say, have you asked your spouse? I mean, like, that's their answer is more important than mine, because it depends on their comfort level, their risk level, their risk tolerance. But you guys did it the right way. So I commend you on your journey, Matt, and thank you for the encouragement for the listeners today. And what I've learned doing this show for a while now is there's just a lot of different personalities out there. There's a lot of different approaches, a lot of ways to do this thing the right way. Like we said, it's the Wild West, a lot of opportunity out there. So thank you for sharing some of your wisdom and experience with us today. And it's been an honor hanging out with you. Thank your wife for loaning you to us for a while, and your family. We appreciate that. And for the listeners too, man, thanks for sharing some of your time with us today. Thanks for donating the most valuable asset you have, some of your time, to hang out with us, to learn. And don't forget, jump into the show notes, all the resources we mentioned today, including our free 50,000 plus member Facebook group where we hang out, talk about this stuff all the time. Leave us some feedback, share our show with your friends, send them to silentjim.com. That's all you need to remember to share our show with people that you love and care about who have an entrepreneurial niggle in the back of their mind. I learned a new word today. All right. God bless you, business building warriors. It's been a pleasure hanging out with you, Matt, as well. And we'll do this again real soon.
Thanks, Jim.